everyone, and welcome back to Book Talk. Today, it is so much fun to introduce you to Deborah Clack, who is here to talk about her brand new book, Even After This. But before we get into that, Deborah, I wanted to give you a chance to introduce yourself because some of our listeners and watchers may not have run into you before. So let's take just a moment to let them know a little bit about you and your journey to this book.
Yes. Hi, my name is Deborah Clack, and I used to joke that I was a professionally unpublished author because took me about 12 years to get published. This book, even after this, is about 13 years in the making. So I love writing, love what I do. And this book, do you want to, should I summarize it now?
Yeah, go ahead. That would be great.
Okay. This book is 4 years after tragedy. There's a botched dinner reservation. A widow walks into a restaurant and her reservation is really messed up. And we're at the beautiful Broadmoor Hotel in Colorado Springs. She's traveling there from Texas and she's kind of stepping out of her comfort zone, kind of dipping her toe in the water about just, what is life like right now. And, but this dinner reservation is totally messed up and it allows her to meet a super famous Hollywood actor, which is hilarious because she's on famous people probation. She's very
Yeah.
awkward. And then it's just kind of their journey to for her to kind of learn to live again and fall in love along the way, but it's not an easy fall. So
No. Well,
anyway.
what I'm loving about Even After This is it's this kind of a rom-com, but there's so much heart to it because her backstory is filled with so much pain and, this journey of kind of coming back to herself after losing so much, and I don't wanna go too far into it because it's something that the reader needs to discover, but it could easily be this women's fiction, kind of heavy, coming back to yourself after experiencing this really, tragic set of circumstances, but then at the same time, you've got this I mean, she is on famous people probation, and, like, literally on famous people probation, and it's hilarious. And there's these moments of just so much levity and joy and silliness. How did you kind of come to that? Because this book is 13 years in the making, and there's this whole journey to it. It would be real easy to just walk away from this story and be like, okay, this one's not meant to be told, and yet it is, and it is for this time. So, why did you stick with it? What was it that about this story or this character that you're just like, I have to get her all the way to the printed page?
Yeah, I don't know if it's my stubbornness or
Yeah.
I don't know. It was one of the first stories I wrote, and I heard a lot of seasoned authors over the years be like, sometimes you've got to, set the first one aside and put it under the
Mm.
bed. And,
Yeah.
it's just not meant to be. It was just kind of your, where you cut your teeth. And this story, I believed in it so much. I mean, in the early years, those versions were terribly written. I mean, just so poorly done. But so I did cut my teeth on it for sure. It's gone through a lot of drafts, but there was something about this story and being able to be in the messy, beautiful of life.
Yeah.
When I first wrote it, I was writing just for me. It was giving a voice. I just needed to get some stuff out. And so I wrote uncensored, and it was just this like
Mm.
whatever. But I found in the middle of it all that it kind of just the humor organically came because it's who she is and it's how she processes things. And so it's how she's wired. And so um, it was just so freeing to write her because every moment got to be its own. So the really tough moments could be really tough, but I always knew, I might go down to a tough place, but I'm gonna bring you back up again. And so
Yeah.
then I would think of the organic humor that could come to let you breathe and let you lift, but
Mhm.
also I just think life is messy, beautiful. And
Yeah.
so um, I don't know. I love it's really interesting now to be I'm looking over here because like my posters on the wall with my, with the stories I'm working on and how I've laid out stories. And with this story, it was just organic and just I wasn't writing to publish. I wrote because I believed in the story. And so
That's
I
awesome.
just stayed with me. It just stayed with me, and I just kept
Yeah,
thinking like, "I believe in this story. How can I redo it? How can I improve it?
yeah.
What does a publisher need to see? What does a reader need to see?" So I stubbornness or just belief in the story, one or the other.
And maybe both. Maybe
Yeah.
it was a combination of both. And, sometimes the time's just not right. Sometimes we have to
Yes.
kinda keep working on it, keep it in the background, and not let go of it, and then at the right moment, it can all come together.
Yes.
But, there's a journey to this. So, how did you change as a storyteller as you're going through this? Because 'Cause you're like, "Yeah, at the beginning, it was terrible, and now it's different." But how did you change through that process and through the years of writing and working and massaging,
Yeah.
even after this? And how did it show up in the story?
I think in the beginning it was truly like craft structural, I had started it in the wrong place.
Yeah.
I was so cliche. I wrote the book and then like axed the first 3 chapters. I didn't really I told way too much and really let,
Mhm.
a lot of her inner monologue kind of dominate in the beginning. And so and it was really, I will tell you, my husband read the first draft, God love him, and he could I mean just could not tell me it was good. I mean, it was like we joke about it now. But and then I got a critique, and I have never seen so much red ink in my life. I'm a former teacher, so I'm like a fan of the red pen. I just so much red ink and but so important. So I cried through
Mhm.
that critique. It was the first time I'd let somebody in the profession look at it. And I cried through that critique, but I came home. It was at a little conference, and I came home and I just said to my husband, like, I want to do this.
Yeah.
And he was great. He was like, okay, what do we do? How do we set up life so that you can pursue this? And he was so supportive of conferences and
Oh,
critique groups and all those things. And so
yeah.
with this book, and this book like went through 3 years with a critique group, and um they were all nonfiction writers. It was hilarious. I think there were 2 other fiction writers, and most of them were nonfiction. So it was incredible to be critiqued by both. And so I don't know, I
Yeah.
just had this like lovely learning process in the middle of it all. But then once I got to like pitching in the industry, then it became about like, what does a reader want and what does a publisher
Yeah.
think is going to sell? And then all of a sudden your brain changes completely and you're like, wait a minute, and
It
you
has
think
to
of this.
sell.
Yes. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I've got to, the scenes that you want to fight for and why you want
Mhm.
to fight for them. And, so it just, I grew with this book. I exponentially, and then the story. But what was really fascinating to me is that the story, while it did change, our hero has had several professions, by the way. He started off as a movie star. He was an accountant. I mean, like, we did a few things with him. Now he's back to the movie star.
Yeah.
So, so like it did go through changes, but the whole of the story and some of the things that I thought maybe a publisher would want me to pull, none of that happened. And so
That's
it's
awesome.
just been interesting. I love the learning process though. And so I'm kind of a nerd that way. And so it was fun. It was a lot of fun. If you want that accountant version, I'll send that to you.
But, at this point, I can't even imagine what it would look like with the
Right.
hero as an accountant, because
Yes.
it would change so much of the context
Hmm.
of everything that was happening. So, to go there and then to come back, I hope you didn't delete the draft. Never
No, I've
delete.
got them all. I've got
Yeah,
all the drafts.
because
I
that's
have
gonna
all
be
the
so fun at
drafts.
some point.
Yes.
So, when you think about, like, all the drafts and everything, um was there a moment that you almost gave up in the 13 years, the movie star, accountant, movie star, back and forth of this, where you were just like, "Yeah, no, I'm done. I've gotta give up." Because you do get that advice from
Yes.
seasoned
Yes.
authors that at a certain point, like Colleen say, "I shoulda given up on that first story sooner so I
Yep.
could get to the next one."
Yes.
Was there that moment when you're like, "Well, maybe they were right about this one. Maybe I should have given up and moved on." Although now you're like, "No, I was right. I shoulda stuck with it." Um, but, or that moment where you're like, "No, I need to tuck everything, because clearly you did with the hero, because 'cause you're like, "Nope, he needs to be somebody else," and then you went, "Nope, I was right the first time."
Yeah.
Um, but was there that moment where you're like, "I just need to let it go and move on?"
There was, it was a couple of years ago at a conference, and And it was really because what I wrote a series. And so this is a 3-book series. And so I kept pitching the next book. One thing that readers may not understand is like you wait for forever for answers sometimes
Yes.
from publishers. It's not like
Yes.
a yes or no. It's
No, not
very
at
like
all.
you are in ambiguity, waiting, not
Mhm.
knowing like what's happening. Like you don't have any idea. And so I just kept writing the next book. Well, then I had a 3-book series and I believed in it. But all 3 of those books over the course of 10 years were it just constant rejection. And
Mm.
so it was like, but I believed in these stories and I had great success. Not great, but I had some success at contests and I had beta readers who like I didn't know who responded well to it. And I just have
Yeah.
to tell you, like, it was almost not crisis of faith is too dramatic, but I really was like, Lord, did I hear you wrong?
Mhm.
Because I just thought I just keep getting this wrong.
Yeah.
And there was a conference a couple of years ago, and I went to that conference thinking like, I think this is it. I don't know. I just can't. It's so heartbreaking. The industry can be so heartbreaking at times.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
as an author, there are so many slots, and then there are so many books that come out, and and
You
so I
start
just
doing the
kept
math.
you start doing the math, it's bad math, y'all. It's bad math. And so I just was like, I think I really was on my knees at that conference. I cried through the whole conference, but I just was like, Lord, did I hear you wrong? Because if I heard you
Yeah.
wrong, I don't want to be on a path you don't want me on. And so, but I also, there was a weird submission issue with one
Mm.
publisher with this book. And, I was like, "I'm just gonna lay all my cards on the table." And so I went to
Yeah.
this pitching appointment and was like, "Listen, here's what happened when I submitted these books to you all, and we didn't hear back, and then once, like, the person didn't even receive it, and just weird circumstances
Yeah.
that never happen, right? Like, everybody's so organized and on top of it, and so it was just so bizarre, and this editor looked at me and was like, "Tell me about these books, 'cause you're not supposed to submit a book twice, right? Like, you're
Yeah.
supposed to submit once, and then that's it. That's its lifetime." And so I just said to her, I said, "I'm just gonna lay my cards on the table. This would be the second time I am pitching, this." There goes my microphone, sorry. The first time that, I said, "This is the second time that I am pitching this book,
Yeah.
this series." And she responded so well to it and was like, "I want to see this immediately." But what was really interesting about it is Haven, this imprint,
Yeah.
had not come about yet. So in that appointment, she was considering me for a different imprint. So I signed with that imprint and then they looked up and by the way, my editor, Kelsey Bowen, is the most beautiful, amazing, witty, fun person on the planet. And she fell in love with this book. And she
Yeah.
fell in love with it in a way that I was like, that. I have waited 13 years for that
Yeah.
response, right? Or at the time I had waited, 10, 11 years for that response, for somebody to just fall in love with it and
Yeah.
believe in it. And then all of a sudden, a few months later, she was like, "Hey, we're considering this new imprint. What would you think about this?"
Yeah.
And I just felt like it was timing. It was just all the Lord's timing. And there's no way that I could have planned it, timed it that way myself, understood what was coming. But when you say like, I really at that conference was like, maybe this is it for me. Like,
Yeah.
I have no idea. This is clearly not working. And so when you get there, and I have several author friends, when they get any dream that you have that you're trying to work towards, you get to the 10 or 11-year mark and you're like,
Yeah.
what is going on? The Lord wired me and put this on my heart and all these things. And then what in the world? And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it was almost, almost that conference.
Yeah. I think all of us have been there. And writing is
Yes.
just hard. And there are those moments where you're like, do I keep pushing? Is this okay, lay it down and walk away?
Yeah.
And I think there's something to that surrender that when we
Yes.
do it, that then there's not that every time we surrender, we get what we want. I mean, that's not it at all.
Yeah.
But I do think sometimes there has to be that moment of, okay, I'm just going to lay it all down,
Yep.
like literally all down. Um, And that's so fun because, yeah, when you get an editor who gets it, it's
Yes.
magic. It is
Yes.
such magic. So that's so fun.
Yes.
So, was there a line or a scene or something in the book where you were like, "Man, I really don't wanna write this. I
Yeah, there
really
is.
I really just don't," and yet you're like, "But I have to."
Yeah. So I don't want to spoil anything, but it's towards the end and it's everything falls apart and I just wanted to give a voice to a different aspect of loss that it was personal to me and I spent years wondering should it be in there, should it not be in there, should it be in there, should it
Mm,
not be in there, and
yeah.
I thought, well, I'm just going to let an editor decide, right? Because they
Mhm.
have a feeling for how it's going to go. And so the loss of um, her loss is just a little bit more than you think that it is, and really a whole lot more than you think it is. And I, first of all, didn't know. I was like, do I want to do that to her? Like, do I as a character? Like, that's hard. And do I want to do that to a reader? That's hard. And then I thought, but you know what? It represents a loss that a lot of women deal with. And I just felt like it was important to give a voice. And so I
Mhm.
put it in there and sobbed through it. And I put it in there and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to let an editor decide if that works. Because sometimes you put things in a book and it's
Yeah.
your voice and you wanted to give it a voice. And then you're like, that does not fit there at all. But yay, I wrote that scene, and then it,
Yeah.
it goes to the side, and it's for you. It's not for everybody else. And on this scene, I have spent years wondering, is this scene going to make the cut? And it did, and my editor was so wise about it, and, but it was hard, and I didn't know if it was the right way to take a reader and to take, the story, and then but I knew to leave it in, and so
Mhm.
I'm thrilled that it got left in there, and I hope that's just another way that a reader can see themselves maybe
Yeah.
in that scene, but I had just a lot of a lot of things going on at the time and was like, okay, just give it a voice. Just keep giving things a voice. And somebody else, I like the freedom now that I have an editor who can come to me and go, Deborah, that so did not work,
Yeah.
or or
Well,
maybe tweak it.
there's a partnership element, and that's
Yes.
because you can do the indie publishing thing or you can do the trad publishing, and one reason I love trad publishing, and you can do this with indie publishing when you do it right and you
Yeah.
hire editors and things, but I'm like, I get so close to the story and the characters that
Yep.
there reaches a point where I'm like, "I've done what I can, and now I need that outside voice to come in and say, 'Okay, Cara, this isn't going the way you thought it was,' or"
Yep.
and oftentimes I have an idea, and I'll be like, "Okay, I know this part of the story isn't working, but I am too close to it. I've done what I
Yes.
can. Now I need your perspective on what do
Yes.
I need to change? What do I need to tweak?" And I'm open,
Yeah.
and that's what part of what I like, and it's a love-hate relationship with the editing process of being like, "Okay, what are your ideas? Maybe, maybe not." But then in the brainstorming with the editor, I can be like, oh, that's what was missing. And now I
Yes.
have an idea to start heading towards that on my own. I knew something wasn't quite right, but I
Yep.
couldn't get all the way there. And
Yeah.
so that can be so magical when it starts
Yes.
working. And so I
Yes.
love that. Okay, last question before we hit a really quick lightning round. So you were talking about, the reader experience and how in tune you are to that. And so when you think about book clubs, is there a single question that you would love for a book club to debate as they're reading even after this?
I've been thinking about this and it's such a great question and I want to come up with something brilliant, but
And that's
what
okay
I
if you can't. Sometimes that's the hardest part of the book to write for me when a publisher's like, okay, what are the book club questions? And I'm like,
yes, you're like, I don't know, just read the book.
yeah, yeah,
But
exactly.
I was thinking through like even just the opening scene, like what would you do? If
Yeah.
you walk in and you have a botched dinner reservation, like what would you do in that situation? because I realized she really had to sit in some uncomfortableness for several minutes while other people kind of figured out what was going on. And
Yeah.
I think I'm such a people pleaser sometimes. I probably would have walked in and been like, "Oh, sorry, I'll just reschedule. See you later."
Yeah.
And I would not have even given the moment time to breathe. And so I think I think it'd be fun to hear a book club discuss like, what would you have done? Would you have gone into that room and had dinner with the group of,
Yeah.
Hollywood people, and
And would you have danced?
would you have danced? Yes, would you have danced? Because I that would have been,
I've probably been like, "Peace out."
yes, yes. And Meredith comes by that famous people probation, honestly. Like I get so nervous if I'm meeting somebody who has any, I mean, just even the most minute, form of like people knowing them or fame or whatever. Like I have a friend who had married somebody who was famous, and she also is, and I was trying like the whole time I was like, I am meeting my dear friend's husband. That's all that's happening right now. Like just focus on that. And I just can't. I'm so awkward. So I would have melted in that first seat if I had really been like me walking through it. And so I think it would be fun to hear a book club kind of talk through like how would they, because I have friends who would probably be like, no, man, I'd totally dance with him,
Yeah.
all of that. So I don't know.
That's so fun. All right. So, what are 3 words for the book's vibe? What can readers
Okay.
expect?
I know this is the worst word to start with, but I'm going to say gut wrenching. Gut wrenching, messy and beautiful, and then I'm going to add a fourth word with humor.
Yeah.
Those would be my 4.
And one trope you embraced and when you flipped on its head.
So I think I embraced the grieving widow
Mhm.
trope. But I think I also flipped her on her head because
Yeah.
she's a humorous grieving widow. Like
Yeah.
there's humor with that. And so I feel like those are the two, I kind of combined those two things.
I think you did too, because it's also got that famous with the like city mouse, country mouse kind of thing going on
Yes.
too. And then readers who love X will love this.
Emotion.
But it
I
it
can't
reminded
quite think of.
yeah, it reminded me of Toni Shiloh's book from her latest series because she had one with like the movie star marrying someone who's
Oh,
not.
okay.
And there's like this whole subgenre in that, someone
Yes.
famous with someone who's really not. Um, so it definitely fits in that space, but yet
Yep.
it's so different and distinctive that it's in there, but it's not.
Yeah,
And then do you have a favorite line?
I do.
Okay.
Okay. Falling asleep while wearing Spanx was not one of my
Yes.
better ideas.
Yes. Yes. That was a funny one. I just started to laugh and I'm like, Sarah Blakely needs that line.
Yes. Yes.
Where can readers find you?
The best way to find me is on my website with my newsletter community. And so I share stuff behind the scenes and things about myself. And then we have a giveaway every month. And I love being able to connect there because it's a little more me, a little more laid back and casual. And so deborahclack.com. And then I'm also on Instagram, and I think it's just Deborah_Clack.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I can't wait for readers to discover Even After This because I have thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been such a fun read.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me and all your encouragement.